right, so in this video we're going to take a look at understanding how some of the things that we've been creating in our virtual machines kind of fit into the bigger picture of Linux and the environment that we're working in. So if you remember from before, from a previous video, I'm just going to do an ls to say, hey, remember we made a folder 1, we made a folder 2. On a Metasploitable side, I do an ls, remember I made a James folder over there. And if you took a look at inside that James folder, ls James, remember we had a test file that we made, and similar with our folder 1 and folder 2. If I do folder 1, ls folder 1, remember we had that test file, and I could use something like cat to be able to spit out the contents of that folder 1/test, and that gives me that test message, hello, we were working with a file inside our folder. If you can remember back to when we were working with PWD, print working directory, that would show that the things that we're making right now are currently operating out of a /home/NSA directory. I'm logged in as an NSA user. And then on the right side, on my Metasploitable side, remember our PWD, it would show us we're logged in and operating out of MSF admin. Okay? So the question that I'd like to take a look at here is understand how do the things that we've been making fit into the bigger picture, as well as to look at what happens when we start working outwards and start referencing files and folders that are not in the directories that we're working with. So the first example here on the left that I'd like to take a look at will be to understand that the highest structure in Linux, that kind of the top of the hierarchy, is the slash location. We would call that the root location. So, and you can change this location by doing a cd and then just doing a slash. So cd/. Now you'll notice to the right of where it says your user login, so for me it's NSA-virtualbox : my directory that I'm now operating out of now says slash. So when I do an ls from here, you'll see that I end up giving all of the different directories that are currently in the slash location. This is very similar to if I were to go to a standard Windows install and just pop open your C drive and see what is everything that's inside the computer. That's what you have at your slash location. If you look from before, when we did our PWD, you notice we were at /home/NSA. And sure enough, when you look on this list, a place found inside our root directory is indeed our home directory. And this is something that I could reference. I could say ls and show me the files inside /home. Okay, and that showed me that we had our NSA, which meant we had one NSA user on our computer here that actually had a home directory. The next, okay, so let's do this again for our Metasploitable side. We could do a cd to slash, and if I do an ls out of my slash location, you'll see you'll get pretty much the same folders. We got a bin, we got a dev, we got a boot, we have an etc, an etsy, a media. We've got a whole bunch of the same locations because they're both Linux computers, but there is a little bit of variation between the Ubuntu machine as opposed to the Metasploitable build. If we can kind of continue on and look and say, how do I get back to where I was? Remember we were in that /home directory, so if I do a ls/home on my Metasploitable side, you'll see we had MSF admin, but on this case we also have 3 other users as well. We've got an FTP user, a service user, and another user called user. So this means that there's at least 3 other users on this particular computer that I could log into, and they actually have a home directory. Whereas on my Ubuntu side, there was only 1 user that actually had a home directory. So just noticing what exists within our computer and how to start navigating throughout it. Now next if you start realizing that we're at the slash location now, you can start to understand too, where did we come from? Remember we came from /home/NSA, and but when you look above on the terminal, you see it didn't actually type that out on each individual line, it just had a tilde. So a tilde is the shortcut for going to the home directory of the user you're currently logged in as. So if I say on this particular Ubuntu machine, I could go cd /tilde, and this will change to my home directory. So now I'm no longer at slash, I'm now specifically at that /home/NSA, and I can see this through a PWD. It put me back in home NSA, or if I do my ls, remember this is where I have all my downloads of my music and my pictures and all that. So it's understanding that there's 2 quick references that are really important in Linux. Are you operating out of your home directory? You can get there quickly through a tilde. Otherwise, if I want to look at just what's the big picture, what's the full path to get to where I am, that will always start with a slash. Next we'll take a look at, so let me do this on my MSF admin side as well. I'll cd him back to tilde, cd tilde, and now I'm back operating out of my out of my home directory on for MSF admin, where I had my James directory I created earlier. So now let's take a look at how this actually gets into referencing. So the important thing to understand is if I'm operating out of my home directory, I can talk about that folder 1 and I can talk about that folder 2 just by typing them out. So an example would be if I wanted to see the contents of folder 2, folder 1, we were doing this before by just typing ls space folder 1. And it would know to look in this particular directory where I'm operating to find folder 1. However, this is what we would call a relative reference. A relative reference looks in the location where you currently are. The difference, if I wanted to see what's inside the home directory, all home directories, you would end up starting from a slash. So that would be an absolute reference. I start from the top of the structure and explicitly say where I'd like to look. So I could do ls/home, and that shows me, please go to the slash, then look in the home directory found there, and that's where I could get NSA. I could expand this a bit further and say, let's take a look at ls/home/NSA. And you see we get the same contents of my home directory, but I did this through an explicit reference to the home directory all the way starting from the root directory. And then let's take it a step further and say if I wanted to see the contents of folder 1 through an absolute reference, I could do hit a right click, ls/home/NSA/folder 1, and I end up getting that same test folder, but you see how just my reference was more explicit. I started from the top of my directories and then drilled my way down into whatever it is that I wanted to reference and look at. So that kind of becomes the question here. As you start using commands that have to interact with a file or interact with a folder, you have to ask yourself the question, is the file or folder going to be in the same directory? In other words, can I use a relative reference? Or do I need to know the full file path? Do I need to know the full explicit absolute path for whatever it is I'm trying to reference? That's when you're going to end up putting a slash in front of the object that you're trying to reference and reference it all the way from the start. Okay, so in some future videos, we'll take a look at some other locations when we start getting into some of the networking and some of the services. An important directory will be something like etc. So doing an ls/etc is a common thing. We're going to be going in here and looking out of a lot of different files and folders and services that are available in this directory. And this is where if I were to do from my home directory, please list the contents of etc, ls/etc without the slash, you'll see it says, I can't find that. There is no directory in here. And that's what will end up happening if you screw up your relative reference as opposed to an absolute reference. Okay, so knowing when to list the slashes, am I starting at the top of my hierarchy and working down, or am I going from a directory, or am I looking for a file or folder in the directory that I'm currently operating out of? We'll also continue working on with other users in the next video, and we'll kind of keep building on this.